Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
Christmas Eve at my parents' house always smelled like cinnamon, sugar, and cheap perfume, the kind my mom wore since I was a kid. The same scent that could make you feel homesick and nauseous at the same time if you weren't careful. The house was decked out like the cover of one of those glossy home magazines, fake snow on the windowsills, blinking red and green lights wrapped around every banister, a 12-foot plastic Santa in the front yard that deflated sadly every night by 9. And, of course, there was the big tree in the living room, lopsided as always because Dad refused to buy a new stand after the old one cracked 10 years ago. Everything looked perfect if you squinted just right and ignored the undercurrent of tension that buzzed louder than the Christmas music pouring out of the dusty stereo. I stood by the fireplace, nursing a lukewarm cider and smiling so hard my jaw hurt, while everyone gathered around Ashley, my younger sister, the family's golden child, who could do no wrong even when she was dead wrong. Ashley was the kind of girl who could burn down the kitchen making toast and somehow get applauded for trying. She had the crowd in the palm of her hand, laughing and tossing her bleach blonde hair like a shampoo commercial, flashing the same 100-watt smile she had been weaponizing since middle school. Mom and Dad were grinning like fools as Dad jingled the keys in his hand, teasing the big reveal. "We wanted this Christmas to be extra special," Mom said, glancing meaningfully at Ashley like she was about to crown her prom queen. I leaned back against the mantel, feeling my stomach tighten. I already knew whatever was coming, it wasn't for me. Dad led us outside into the driveway, and there it was parked right under the floodlight like a damn commercial, a brand new white Jeep Grand Cherokee, gleaming so brightly it practically screamed, "Ashley wins again." A giant red bow sat on the hood, fluttering in the icy wind. Ashley shrieked and clapped her hands like a toddler at a birthday party, throwing herself into Dad's arms while Mom wiped a fake tear from her eye. I stood there, clutching my cider so tightly the cheap styrofoam cup bent in my hand, feeling about as invisible as a ghost at a seance. "Don't think we forgot about you, sweetie," Mom said then, digging into her purse and fishing out a tiny, crumpled envelope. She handed it to me with a big, exaggerated smile, like she was handing over the deed to a mansion instead of what felt like a consolation prize at a rigged carnival. I took it without a word, my fingers already trembling with a cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Inside was a cheap card, one of those $5 drugstore ones with a cartoon reindeer dancing on the front, and scrawled in my dad's messy handwriting were the words, "Better luck next year." For a second, the world tilted sideways. I heard the blood rush in my ears louder than the whine of the neighbor's snowblower, louder than Ashley's squeals as she explored every inch of her new car. I blinked, reading it again just to be sure. Better luck next year. Like my entire existence was some losing lottery ticket they were embarrassed to have picked. I felt every inch of my 30 years crash down on me in that moment, every overlooked birthday, every Christmas where Ashley got the big gift and I got socks, every time they looked right through me like I was a piece of furniture they forgot they owned. I smiled, wide and sweet, and tucked the card carefully back into the envelope like it was something precious. "Thank you," I said, loud enough for them to hear over Ashley's latest round of shrieking about heated seats and rearview cameras. Mom beamed at me, clearly relieved I was not going to make a scene, that I would just take it like I always did, the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who didn't cause a fuss. I looked around the driveway, at the happy little tableau they had set up, the proud parents, the golden child, the shiny new car, and I realized something with perfect, icy clarity. They had no idea. They had absolutely no idea. I tucked my hands into the pockets of my old wool coat, the same one I had worn for 3 winters straight, because there were always more important expenses when it came to money. I turned my face toward the biting wind, so they wouldn't see the way my lips twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile anymore. They thought this was just another Christmas, where I would swallow the hurt, choke it down like dry turkey, and keep smiling. They thought they had won. They thought they had beaten me into quiet submission, again. What they didn't know, what they couldn't even imagine in their wildest, most self-congratulatory dreams, was that parked just a few feet away, hidden from view by the shadows and the snow, was something else. Something with my name on it. And tonight, oh tonight, they were going to find out that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should fear the most. If you had asked my parents or anyone who pretended to know me, they would have said I was the kind of person who just never caught a break, the type who was always chasing something that stayed 3 steps ahead no matter how hard I ran. They would not have said I was someone who kept score, someone who remembered every slight, every jab disguised as a joke, every dinner table where my stories got cut off mid-sentence because Ashley needed to talk about her latest nail appointment. They would not have said it because they never noticed it, and that right there was the real truth. It did not start all at once, not with a lightning bolt or some big, dramatic moment that made me swear revenge like something out of a soap opera. No, it started small, the way most terrible things do. It started on my birthday last year, 11 months ago, or, wait, maybe it was 12 months ago now that I think about it. Whichever. Anyway, it was a cold Wednesday night, and I sat in my apartment eating leftover Chinese takeout while scrolling through pictures of my family's impromptu dinner for Ashley at a steakhouse that cost more for a side salad than I made in an hour at the time. I wasn't invited. Not even a text. Not even a half-assed wish you were here. On Facebook, nothing but silence, like I had never even existed, while they toasted Ashley's new promotion at a job she barely showed up to on time. They posted selfies with her holding up a glass of champagne, her fake diamond-studded nails flashing in the light, while I picked at cold lo mein under a flickering kitchen bulb that buzzed louder than the refrigerator. That was the night something inside me hardened into something sharper, something quieter than anger, but so much heavier. Of course, that wasn't the first time. 5 years ago, when Ashley slept with my boyfriend, my parents actually had the balls to sit me down and tell me that things like this happen when people grow apart, as if I had somehow caused it by not being exciting enough for him to stay interested. They kept inviting him to family cookouts for months after we broke up, like it was me who had messed everything up by daring to be mad about it. Ashley cried, of course, big, fat, fake tears that melted on her cheeks faster than ice on asphalt, and they fell all over themselves to comfort her, to remind her that family sticks together. As long as it wasn't me who needed sticking to, apparently. Then there were the smaller things, the death by 1,000 cuts things that would sound petty if you said them out loud, but added up to something you could drown in if you let it. Like the time Mom forgot to send me an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner, but made a huge fuss online about the whole family being together. Or when Dad borrowed $500 from me for a minor emergency and then conveniently forgot about it the same week he dropped $4,000 on Ashley's new patio furniture set. Or the year Ashley's dog got a bigger Christmas stocking than I did, and mine was filled with socks from the clearance bin. After a while, you stop expecting anything different. You stop being surprised. You learn how to show up at Christmas with a smile so well-practiced it could win awards, how to tell people your plans are low-key this year when they ask about your birthday, how to laugh off being the family's official afterthought because the alternative is crying. And you are so damn tired of crying. So, I made a different choice. I decided, right then and there, that next year would not be another rerun of the same sad sitcom I had been starring in since I was old enough to spell resentment. No, next year, this year, would be different. It would be the year I stopped waiting for someone else to hand me a piece of the pie and started baking my own damn pie, even if I had to build the oven with my bare hands. They thought I was working a dead-end job at the time, slinging coffee at a local cafe that smelled like burnt espresso and teenage desperation, and sure, I was for a while. But what they did not know, what they never once bothered to ask, was what I was doing on my nights off, and early mornings before my shifts, and weekends when everyone else was busy bragging about bottomless mimosas and $20 avocado toast. I spent those hours elbow-deep in engine grease and rust, learning how to tear down a car piece by piece and build it back better than new. I worked with a guy named Ronnie who ran a junkyard/workshop on the edge of town, a place where dreams went to die and sometimes, if you were lucky, came back as something stronger. Ronnie was rough around the edges, smelled like gasoline and regret, and taught me more about cars and life than any fancy degree ever could. For 11 months straight, I saved every dollar I could scrape together. I bought broken-down beaters for next to nothing, spent sleepless nights sanding, fixing, welding, replacing, cursing, and praying, and then flipped them for a profit that, little by little, started to look like something real. I built a side hustle that turned into a business that turned into a small empire in my little corner of the world, all while my parents thought I was still bumbling around like some lost kid who could not even afford a proper Christmas gift. The truth was, by the time Christmas rolled around, I had more money sitting in my savings account than Ashley had credit card debt, and trust me, that is saying something when you have to take out a second credit card just to pay off the first. I had built something with my own 2 hands, something no one could take from me, not even them. But the best part, the sweetest part, was not the money or the independence or the fact that I finally felt like I could breathe again without asking permission. The best part was knowing that while they were handing me that cheap, ugly little card with "better luck next year" scrawled inside it, thinking they had finally crushed whatever stubborn little spark I had left, I was standing there smiling because I knew something they didn't. I knew that parked just down the street, under a layer of fresh snow, hidden by a tarp and a little bit of strategic misdirection, was a machine so beautiful it could make a grown man cry. And it had my name on the title, clear as day, bold as hell. They thought they had won. They were about to find out they had not even been playing the same game. Most people think revenge is loud, something you can hear coming from a mile away, with warning signs and fireworks and blood-boiling arguments that end with slammed doors and broken plates on the kitchen floor. But I have learned the most dangerous kind of revenge moves in silence, like a ripple under still water, too deep and too quiet for anyone to notice until it is too late. That is exactly how I planned it, because if there is one thing my family taught me well, it is how to disappear right in front of people who claim to love you. After I made up my mind that night with the lo mein and the flickering kitchen light, I started hunting for ways out, ways up, ways to make sure I never had to sit through another pitying glance or whispered conversation about how I just hadn't found my path yet. I spent nights watching tutorial videos until my eyes burned, learning everything I could about engine rebuilds, classic car restorations, wiring, upholstery, paint jobs, and every tiny detail that makes a car go from worthless junk to showroom beauty. The trick was realizing that most people gave up before they even started, convinced they needed a fancy workshop or deep pockets to even dream about it, but I had something better than money. Something they could never buy no matter how many credit cards they maxed out. I had patience and I had grit. By the time spring rolled around, I was flipping my first project, an old '68 Mustang that had been sitting under a tree behind Ronnie's shop for longer than I had been alive. The thing looked like hell, smelled worse, and sounded like a dying lawnmower when it actually managed to turn over, but I saw something under all that rust and rot. Ronnie thought I was crazy, told me to just strip it for parts and cut my losses, but I shook my head and went to work with a stubbornness I had inherited straight from my father's side of the family, though God knows he would never claim me. I spent every weekend and every free night busting my knuckles open, scraping grease out from under my nails, sanding down old paint until my arms felt like they were going to fall off. Slowly, the car started to change, not magically, not overnight like in the movies, but inch by inch, bolt by bolt, until one day it roared to life so loud it shook the windows in Ronnie's little office. I sold that Mustang to a retired Army colonel who paid cash on the spot without blinking, and just like that, I was in business. I called it Second Chance Garage, set up a cheap website, started listing my projects online with before and after photos that made people do double takes, because nothing sells better than the idea that anything, or anyone, can be made new again if you just try hard enough. Orders started coming in, first a trickle, then a stream, and before I knew it, I had enough custom commissions lined up to keep me working 6 days a week. I had repeat customers, word-of-mouth referrals, even a feature in a small local magazine that my parents probably used as a coaster without ever reading. It was slow, brutal work, and there were plenty of nights I wondered if it was all just some stupid dream fueled by spite and bad Chinese food, but every time my hands ached and my bank account grew, I reminded myself that dreams built on anger sometimes stand stronger than the ones built on hope. Meanwhile, Ashley was busy racking up debt like it was a competitive sport, posting Instagram stories from beach resorts she could not afford and posing with handbags that cost more than I had spent on my first 3 cars combined. She was living the dream, or so it seemed, while interest rates climbed and overdue notices piled up in her mailbox back home. Not that she ever mentioned that part when she came home to bask in Mom and Dad's endless approval. They still bragged about her at church, still talked about her successful career in sales, even though anyone with 2 brain cells could see she was drowning. Nobody bragged about me. Nobody asked what I was up to. Nobody noticed that while Ashley was spiraling, I was climbing, slow and steady, step by bloody step. I preferred it that way, honestly. It is easier to move in silence when nobody bothers to watch you in the first place. By October, I had saved enough to buy something just for myself. Not a project car, not another flip, but a car I had dreamed about since I was a teenager driving past fancy dealerships on the wrong side of town. It was a '67 Shelby Mustang GT 500, deep black with racing stripes and an engine that purred like a satisfied lion. It had been sitting in a barn for decades, forgotten and buried under tarps and dust, and when the old man who owned it decided to finally part ways, I pounced faster than a cat in a mouse field. I poured everything into it: time, sweat, money, pieces of myself I did not even know I could give, until it was no longer just a car, but a living, breathing monument to every time someone had told me I was not good enough. And that car, my beautiful black Bullet, was the very thing waiting just around the corner tonight, under a tarp and a growing blanket of snow, while my parents laughed and celebrated another year of favoritism and short-sighted cruelty. They had no idea that while they were patting themselves on the back for another Christmas well done, they were about to find out that some gifts come wrapped in lessons you never forget. Tonight was not just about getting even. Tonight was about showing them that while they thought I was spinning my wheels, I had been building something unstoppable. Something they could never take credit for. Something they could never, ever touch. The sound of laughter spilled out through the front door like a broken dam, too loud and too shrill for the cold night air that wrapped around me like a heavy, wet blanket, as if even the December wind was tired of pretending everything was perfect inside that house. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, letting the freezing air bite at my cheeks and strip the fake smile from my face, feeling the last flickers of obligation burn out somewhere in the hollow part of my chest that had been hollow for so long I hardly noticed anymore. Behind me, through the wide front windows, I could see the glowing scene of my family huddled together in the living room, Ashley sitting on the floor surrounded by discarded wrapping paper and glittering gift bags, Mom perched on the arm of the couch like some proud queen surveying her kingdom, Dad fiddling with the television remote while the Yule log channel crackled and popped fake warmth into the room. I watched them laugh, pass around another plate of cookies, top off glasses of eggnog they would never offer to me, and I realized how long I had been on the outside looking in, even when I was standing right there among them. The driveway was slick under my boots as I slipped quietly around the side of the house, my breath coming out in ragged white clouds that disappeared almost as fast as they formed, the silence between my footsteps heavier than the snow that had started to fall again. Soft and steady. I had parked it just out of sight, down by the fence line where the old willow tree still leaned toward the ground like a penitent sinner, its bare branches clacking softly in the breeze. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from fear, not even from excitement, but from the sheer weight of what was about to happen, the moment that would split everything into before and after, a clean break like a snapped bone that never heals quite right. I could almost hear Ronnie's gravelly voice in my ear, telling me to be smart, to keep my head down, to let idiots live in their own little bubbles if it kept my hands clean. But I had learned something this past year. Sometimes the only way to be seen is to burn the whole damn bubble to the ground. I reached the tarp and yanked it back with a single, hard pull, the cold fabric rasping over the gleaming metal underneath with a sound like a slow, satisfied sigh. There she was, waiting patiently like a faithful ghost, the midnight black '67 Shelby Mustang, polished to a mirror shine that caught the weak light from the house and shattered it into 100 sharp pieces. The chrome sparkled like ice under the moonlight, the deep rumble of the engine almost vibrating in my bones even though the key was still in my coat pocket. I ran my fingers along the edge of the hood, feeling the smooth, cold metal under my gloves, tracing the lines I had rebuilt bolt by painstaking bolt, every inch of this machine a testament to my stubbornness, my rage, and my refusal to stay small. The leather seats inside were buttery soft, and if you looked close enough, you would see my name, Hannah Grace, burned into the leather of the driver's seat in crisp, bold letters, a permanent reminder that for once in my goddamn life, something belonged to me and only me. No loans, no co-signers, no whispered jokes about how I was finally doing something productive. Paid in full with my own blood, sweat, and tears, a truth they would never understand because they had never built anything real in their lives, never loved anything enough to bleed for it. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather groaning softly under my weight, and just sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Out of habit, I reached for the ignition, but stopped myself just short. No, not yet, not until the final piece was in place. Because you see, it wasn't enough to just show up with my own gift, to roll in with something so beautiful it would suck all the air out of their carefully manufactured happiness like a vacuum. No, that would be satisfying, sure, but it wouldn't stick. It wouldn't haunt them the way they deserve to be haunted. That is why earlier, while everyone was buzzing around Ashley's new Jeep like bees to a sugar spill, I had quietly slipped away and tucked a little surprise inside. Nothing big, nothing flashy. Just a plain white envelope taped under the passenger seat where she would find it eventually, maybe later that night when she was showing off to her boyfriend, or maybe a few days from now when she was still riding the high of being the favorite child. Inside that envelope was something they could not laugh off, something they could not excuse or explain away with another shrug and a condescending pat on the head. A list, neat and printed, of every time Ashley had screwed me over, every time she had lied, stolen, cheated, or humiliated me, complete with dates, receipts, screenshots, and just enough commentary to make it sting like a slap in the face. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about truth. It was about making them see what they had chosen to ignore for years, to rub their noses in the mess they had made and called a family. I leaned my head back against the seat, closing my eyes for a moment, letting the cold soak through the windows and into my bones. I could still hear their laughter drifting on the wind, tinny and hollow, and I smiled, a real smile this time, small and sharp as a knife's edge. Tonight was the beginning of something new, something better. And they would never even see it coming. Because the thing about ghosts is, they are always there, just outside the window, just beyond the light, waiting for the perfect moment to be seen. It did not take long for the explosion to happen, because drama was like oxygen in my family, something they could not survive without for more than a few hours at a time, and tonight, I had practically dropped a match into a room filled with gasoline. I had not even made it back to the front door, had not even wiped the last smirk off my face, when I heard it, Ashley's shrill screech cutting through the night like a rusty saw blade. Her high heels clacking against the driveway as she stormed out of the Jeep, clutching the envelope in one trembling, manicured hand. "What the hell is this?" she shrieked, waving the papers in the air like she was holding a live snake, her cheeks flushed red with the kind of rage only a lifetime of entitlement can properly cook up. I paused on the last step of the porch, slowly turning back toward her, taking in the sight of her wild blonde hair whipping around in the icy wind, the expensive leather boots she had probably put on layaway, The fancy new car that was no longer the shiny prize it had been 15 minutes ago. Mom and Dad followed close behind her, stumbling out into the cold in their ugly Christmas sweaters, their faces a mix of confusion and immediate, knee-jerk defensiveness. I watched Dad grab Ashley's shoulder like he could physically pull the meltdown back into her chest if he just squeezed hard enough, but it was far too late for that. She was already in full-blown tantrum mode, the kind she had not thrown since we were kids, and she broke my favorite toy and then cried until Dad blamed me for leaving it where she could reach it. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Mom cooed, casting a quick, panicked glance at me like she already knew deep down that somehow, someway, this would turn out to be my fault. Ashley shoved the envelope into her chest with so much force that Mom stumbled backward, clutching the papers like they might bite her. Dad snatched the envelope next, flipping through the neatly printed pages, his mouth working soundlessly as he took in the carefully listed betrayals, the stolen boyfriends, the unpaid loans, the birthday dinners forgotten in favor of spa weekends, the countless times they had thrown me under the bus and backed over me twice for good measure. Every receipt, every screenshot, every timestamp was right there in black and white, undeniable and ugly and real in a way that no amount of parental hand-waving could erase. "Merry Christmas, Ash," I said, my voice calm and even, cutting through the night like a blade made of ice. "Thought you might want a receipt for all the free rides." For a moment, nobody moved, nobody breathed, as if the cold itself had frozen them mid-denial. Then Dad found his voice again, low and dangerous, the same voice he used when the neighbor's dog crapped on his lawn and he needed someone to yell at. "That's real mature, Hannah," he spat, his face turning the same shade of furious purple he used to get when he drank too much at Thanksgiving. "Real damn classy, ruining Christmas like this." Mom nodded furiously, tears already leaking from the corners of her eyes like she was the victim here, like it was some grand injustice that I had dared to pull back the curtain on the play they had been starring in for the last 30 years. "We were just trying to have a nice night," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her own selective memory. "Why couldn't you just be happy for your sister for once?" Happy for my sister. Happy that once again, I had been handed scraps while Ashley got the whole damn feast. Happy that after decades of being the punching bag, the afterthought, the easy one to blame when things got uncomfortable, I had finally been given the honor of standing there while they gaslit me into oblivion one last time. I smiled then, a real smile that had nothing to do with making them comfortable anymore, nothing to do with playing the good daughter or the better person or any of the other roles they had shoved me into over the years. It felt strange at first, like stretching muscles I had not used in a long, long time, but it also felt right in a way that no Christmas morning ever had. Without another word, I turned on my heel and walked calmly back to my Mustang, the crunch of snow under my boots loud and satisfying in the brittle night air. I could hear Ashley sobbing behind me, loud and dramatic and meant for an audience, but for once I did not feel the slightest tug of guilt or obligation to fix it, to soothe it, to absorb it like I always had. The Mustang growled to life under me as I slid into the driver's seat, the leather cold against my skin, but the engine hot and ready. I backed slowly down the driveway, my headlights sweeping across their stunned, furious faces, casting long, thin shadows against the front of the house. For one insane moment, I wondered if they would try to stop me, if they would throw themselves in front of the car like martyrs in an old war movie, but of course they did not. They just stood there, still clutching the broken pieces of their perfect little lie, too proud or too stubborn or maybe just too stupid to realize it had all been shattered long before tonight. As I turned onto the main road, the Mustang's tires biting into the slick pavement, I caught a glimpse of the house in my rearview mirror, golden and cozy-looking from the outside, still decorated like something out of a Hallmark movie. For a split second, something twisted in my gut, a sharp, sour pang that felt dangerously close to regret, but I forced myself to keep driving, to keep my eyes on the road ahead. Was it victory? Was it justice? Or was it just another sad, Stupid chapter in a book I should have burned years ago? I did not know. Maybe I would never know. All I knew was that for the first time in my life, the weight of my own silence had been lifted from my shoulders, and it was replaced with something raw and honest and terrifying: freedom, bought and paid for with every broken promise, every cruel joke, every invisible Christmas. And if that freedom came at the cost of burning the last bridge I had left, then so be it. Some bridges are meant to be burned. Some families are meant to be left behind.